This is an NBC News special report. Here's Lester Holt.
And good day, everyone. On a very busy News Friday, we're coming back on the air to bring you remarks from President Trump, an announcement concerning the ongoing government shutdown, now in day 35, the longest shutdown ever. The president about to speak to reporters at a hastily arranged, previously unscheduled event at the White House. This comes on a day when longtime Trump confidant Roger Stone was arrested at his Florida home and charged with 7 counts of obstruction, making false statements, and witness tampering, centering on his communications with the Trump campaign about WikiLeaks and stolen Democratic emails. Stone, the latest Trump associate to be charged by special counsel Robert Mueller. The president is going to speak shortly in the Rose Garden. We don't know if he is going to talk about the Stone indictment, but we are led to believe he will speak about the government shutdown and apparently a way forward. Multiple sources telling NBC News that the president is expected to announce a short-term funding bill that would reopen the government, at least temporarily. Let's go to Hallie Jackson right now in the Rose Garden. Hallie, what more guidance have you been given on this?
Multiple sources, Lester, are telling our team that it appears there has been a deal reached to reopen the government until February 15th. So this is a short-term deal that, based on our reporting, would not include new wall money, something that the president has been asking for, and it's at current funding levels as well. So what does this mean in plain English? It means the government will likely reopen if, in fact, this is the deal and if it passes. But it means that this fight will happen again, potentially in a matter of 3 weeks from now. Really, the best way to describe this, it appears, is as a huge concession by President Trump for now. There have been outside pressures building, not just on this White House, but over on Capitol Hill as well, including today, for example, with those air traffic delays in airports, some of the busiest airports in the country, in New York and in Philadelphia. So we do expect to hear from the president on what I am told will be a way forward on this. But again, the details are something that Republicans, Democrats on Capitol Hill want to hear from President Trump himself. That has been a sticking point in negotiations even before this shutdown started, Lester. Lawmakers not clear on what exactly President Trump would support, what he would really sign off on. So this is clearly a pivotal moment in these shutdown talks. You mentioned that this is not the only piece of breaking news that we are following, of course, with the arrest and the indictment of Trump confidant Roger Stone as well early this morning in Fort Lauderdale. You saw him outside of court earlier this morning. President Trump has not responded on camera yet about that. It is possible he may take questions. We don't have any guidance either way. I can tell you, Lester, the last time that we joined you from the Rose Garden, it was for what turned into an impromptu news conference. So it's possible the president may have something to say about this. He may want to talk about both of these stories.
All right, Hallie, we'll be going back to you. Let me go to Kelly O'Donnell, though, right now on Capitol Hill as we await the president. Kelly, a couple things. First of all, it seems that the deal we're about to hear sounds very similar to the one that fell apart leading to the shutdown.
Well, there have been various iterations of this, Lester, and what we expect is this is a short-term measure, just 3 weeks, to reopen the government, get paychecks flowing, and then separate more negotiations over border security and border funding. This is to take the pain away from 800,000 federal workers and all of the ripple effects, and to take less of the emphasis on using the government's status of open or closed as a leverage point. This is something that has been talked about by lawmakers in both parties. Obviously, they would prefer a longer-term solution, so we will likely revisit this in a couple of weeks. But it does take the instant pain away from people who haven't been able to pay their bills and all the ripple effects, including threats to the transportation security, the infrastructure, all of those things. Now, what happens next? We will wait to hear from officials here on Capitol Hill. They've assured me that they don't want to commit to anything publicly until they hear from the president and his commitment to sign something. It would be something they could act on quickly. When there is an agreement on Capitol Hill, things can move fast because both parties can say they will agree to something unanimously and move it through, get it to the president's desk for a signature, and then begin this next phase, which would be about larger negotiations over border security. You know the president wants a wall or a barrier. Democrats have said no. If this plays out as we expect, Lester, It really marks a significant pair of victories for House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who withheld the State of the Union, that high-profile event, from the president until government reopens. That was piece one. And this is the kind of solution she has advocated for, getting the government reopened and then talking about border security. So if it plays out as we have been led to believe, count this as a sign of divided government coming to Washington and President Trump having a very formidable adversary in Nancy Pelosi. For Senate Republicans, there has also been a breakaway of a handful of Senate Republicans who have also urged their leadership to get government open and then talk about a border barrier, border security, other kinds of technologies. So this is a significant day, and we expect that this announcement, putting it with all the trappings of the Rose Garden, does add weight if the president is willing to go for this. He talked about it yesterday, saying that he wanted to see the government reopen. We know he won't back away from his desire to have a wall, but the mechanics of Washington just won't allow it right now. Lester?
Yeah, and the caveats well understood. This is a president who is prone to changing his mind at the last minute, but let's find out what he has to say about the shutdown and a way forward. President of the United States reaching the microphone in the Rose Garden.
Thank you very much, my fellow Americans. I am very proud to announce today that we have reached a deal to end the shutdown and reopen the federal government. As everyone knows, I have a very powerful alternative, but I didn't want to use it at this time. Hopefully it will be unnecessary. I want to thank all of the incredible federal workers and their amazing families who have shown such extraordinary devotion in the face of this recent hardship. You are fantastic people. You are incredible patriots. Many of you have suffered far greater than anyone but your families would know or understand. And not only did you not complain, but in many cases you encouraged me to keep going because you care so much about our country and about its border security. Again, I thank you. All Americans, I thank you. You are very, very special people. I am so proud that you are citizens of our country. When I say make America great again, it could never be done without you. Great people. In a short while, I will sign a bill to open our government for 3 weeks until February 15th. I will make sure that all employees receive their back pay very quickly or as soon as possible. It'll happen fast. I am asking Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to put this proposal on the floor immediately. After 36 days of spirited debate and dialogue, I have seen and heard from enough Democrats and Republicans that they are willing to put partisanship aside, I think, and put the security of the American people first. I do believe they're going to do that. They have said they are for complete border security, and they have finally and fully acknowledged that having barriers, fencing, or walls, or whatever you want to call it, will be an important part of the solution. A bipartisan conference committee of House and Senate lawmakers and leaders will immediately begin reviewing the requests of our Homeland Security experts, and experts they are, and also law enforcement professionals who have worked with us so closely. We want to thank Border Patrol, ICE, and all law enforcement. Been incredible. Based on operational guidance from the experts in the field, they will put together a Homeland Security package for me to shortly sign into law. Over the next 21 days, I expect that both Democrats and Republicans will operate in good faith. This is an opportunity for all parties to work together for the benefit of our whole beautiful, wonderful nation. If we make a fair deal, the American people will be proud of their government for proving that we can put country before party. We can show all Americans and people all around the world that both political parties are united when it comes to protecting our country and protecting our people. Many disagree, but I really feel that working with Democrats and Republicans, we can make a truly great and secure deal happen for everyone. Walls should not be controversial. Our country has built 654 miles of barrier over the last 15 years, and every career Border Patrol agent I have spoken with has told me that walls work. They do work. No matter where you go, they work. Israel built a wall, 99.9% successful. Won't be any different for us. They keep criminals out. They save good people from attempting a very dangerous journey from other countries, thousands of miles, because they think they have a glimmer of hope of coming through. With a wall, they don't have that hope. They keep drugs out, and they dramatically increase efficiency by allowing us to patrol far larger areas with far fewer people. It's just common sense. Walls work. That's why most of the Democrats in Congress have voted in the past for bills that include walls and physical barriers and very powerful fences. The walls we are building are not medieval walls. They are smart walls designed to meet the needs of frontline border agents and are operationally effective. These barriers are made of steel, have see-through visibility, which is very important, and are equipped with sensors, monitors, and cutting-edge technology, including state-of-the-art drones. We do not need 2,000 miles of concrete wall from sea to shiny sea. We never did. We never proposed that. We never wanted that, because we have barriers at the border where natural structures are as good as anything that we can build. They're already there. They've been there for millions of years. Our proposed structures will be in predetermined high-risk locations that have been specifically identified by the Border Patrol to stop illicit flows of people and drugs. No border security plan can ever work without a physical barrier. Just doesn't happen. At the same time, we need to increase drug detection technology and manpower to modernize our ports of entry, which are obsolete. The equipment's obsolete. They're old. They're tired. This is something we have all come to agree on and will allow for quicker and safer commerce. These critical investments will improve and facilitate legal trade and travel through our lawful ports of entry. Our plan also includes desperately needed humanitarian assistance for those being exploited and abused by coyotes, smugglers, and the dangerous journey north. The requests we have put before Congress are vital to ending the humanitarian and security crisis on our southern border. Absolutely vital. Will not work without it. This crisis threatens the safety of our country and thousands of American lives. Criminal cartels, narco-terrorists, transnational gangs like MS-13, and human traffickers are brazenly violating U.S. laws and terrorizing innocent communities. Human traffickers. The victims are women and children. maybe to a lesser extent, believe it or not, children. Women are tied up, they're bound, duct tape put around their faces, around their mouths. In many cases, they can't even breathe. They're put in the backs of cars or vans or trucks. They don't go through your port of entry. They make a right turn going very quickly. They go into the desert areas or whatever areas you can look at. And as soon as there's no protection, they make a left or a right into the United States of America. There's nobody to catch them. There's nobody to find them. They can't come through the port, because if they come through the port, people will see 4 women sitting in a van with tape around their face and around their mouth. Can't have that. And that problem, because of the internet, is the biggest problem. It's never been like this before that you can imagine. It's at the worst level, human trafficking, in the history of the world. This is not a United States problem. This is a world problem. But they come through areas where they have no protection, where they have no steel barriers, where they have no walls. And we can stop almost 100% of that. The profits reaped by these murderous organizations are used to fund their malign and destabilizing conduct throughout this hemisphere. Last year alone, ICE officers removed 10,000 known or suspected gang members like MS-13 and members as bad as them. Horrible people, tough, mean, sadistic. In the last 2 years, ICE officers arrested a total of 266,000 criminal aliens inside of the United States, including those charged or convicted of nearly 100,000 assaults, 30,000 sex crimes, and 4,000 homicides, or, as you would call them, violent, vicious killings. Can be stopped. Vast quantities of lethal drugs, including meth, fentanyl, heroin, and cocaine, are smuggled across our southern border and into U.S. schools and communities. Drugs kill much more than 70,000 Americans a year and cost our society in excess of $700 billion. The sheer volume of illegal immigration has overwhelmed federal authorities and stretched our immigration system beyond the breaking point. Nearly 50 migrants a day are being referred for medical assistance. They're very, very sick, making this a health crisis as well. It's a very big health crisis. People have no idea how big it is unless you're there. Our backlog in the immigration courts is now far greater than the 800,000 cases that you've been hearing about over the last couple of years. Think of that, though. 800,000 cases, because our laws are obsolete. So obsolete. They're the laughingstock all over the world. Our immigration laws, all over the world, they've been there for a long time, are the laughingstock all over the world. We do not have the necessary space or resources to detain, house, vet, screen, and safely process this tremendous influx of people. In short, we do not have control over who is entering our country, where they come from, who they are, why they are coming. The result for many years is a colossal danger to public safety. We're going to straighten it out. It's not hard. It's easy if given the resources. Last month was the third straight month in a row with 60,000 apprehensions on our southern border. Think of that. We apprehended 60,000 people. That's like a stadium full of people, a big stadium. There are many criminals being apprehended, but vast numbers are coming because our economy is so strong. We have the strongest economy now in the entire world. You see what's happening. We have nowhere left to house them and no way to promptly remove them. We can't get them out because our laws are so obsolete, so antiquated, and so bad. Without new resources from Congress, we will be forced to release these people into communities, something we don't want to do, called catch and release. You catch them. Even if they're criminals, you then release them. And you can't release them from where they came. So they go into our country and end up in places you would least suspect. And we do as little releasing as possible, but they're coming by the hundreds of thousands. I have had 0 Democrat lawmakers volunteer to have them released into their districts or states, and I think they know that, and that's what we're going to be discussing over the next 3 weeks. The painful reality is that the tremendous economic and financial burdens of illegal immigration fall on the shoulders of low-income Americans, including millions of wonderful, patriotic, law-abiding immigrants who enrich our nation. As Commander-in-Chief, my highest priority is the defense of our great country. We cannot surrender operational control over the nation's borders to foreign cartels, traffickers, and smugglers. We want future Americans to come to our country legally and through a system based on merit. We need people to come to our country. We have great companies moving back into the United States. And we have the lowest employment and the best employment numbers that we've ever had. There are more people working today in the United States than have ever worked in our country. We need people to come in to help us on the farms and with all of these great companies that are moving back. Finally, they're moving back. People said it couldn't happen. It's happening. And we want them to enjoy the blessings of safety and liberty and the rule of law. We cannot protect and deliver these blessings without a strong and secure border. I believe that crime in this country can go down by a massive percentage if we have great security on our southern border. I believe drugs, large percentages of which come through the southern border, will be cut by a number that nobody will believe. So let me be very clear. We really have no choice but to build a powerful wall or steel barrier. If we don't get a fair deal from Congress, the government will either shut down on February 15th again, or I will use the powers afforded to me under the laws and the Constitution of the United States to address this emergency. We will have great security. And I want to thank you all very much. Thank you very much.
President Trump taking no questions, extended remarks that we had heard many times before about the wall and reasons to be fearful. But the headline at the beginning of that, the president agreeing to reopen the government until February 15th, putting it in the hands of lawmakers to get that done very quickly. The bottom line, the important thing here is that would put 800,000 federal workers who have been receiving no pay put them back to work fairly soon. Let's go to Hallie Jackson right now. Start off with her. She is in the Rose Garden there. Hallie, some other observations from you.
Yeah, Lester, and forgive me, I'm just getting tuned in now. We tried to get some questions to President Trump on his way out of the Rose Garden. He did not answer any of those questions related to this deal now to end the shutdown, what happens next, or on Roger Stone, that other story we talked about, his longtime confidant who was arrested and indicted by the special counsel by FBI agents earlier this morning in Florida. So, bottom line here, the government will reopen. That is undoubtedly excellent news for the furloughed federal workers, roughly 800,000 people who had not been getting paychecks and are due to miss their second paycheck today, in addition to those 1.2 million government contractors. However, this is just temporary relief. And I think one of the more significant things the president said was what happens on February 15th if, in fact, he does not get the additional wall money that he wants. Because remember, this short-term deal, based on our reporting, does not include new wall money or new fence money, if you will. It is simply a continuation of the current levels of funding. So on February 15th, Lester, what happens if the president doesn't get what he wants? He says either the government will shut down again or he will use the executive powers that he has. What does that mean? Well, Lester, that's a national emergency. That is something that this White House had on the table. The president put it on the table and did not take it off. We have been hearing from our sources over the last several weeks that the president did not want to declare a national emergency. He wanted to put the ball in Congress's court and see if there could be a congressional solution. But, Lester, let's see what happens 3 weeks from now, because that is clearly a direction that the president may head by his own admission here, if in fact he's not able to come to some kind of a deal long term now to reopen the government. So where does this go over on the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue? We expect to hear from Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. It's still a question mark of when exactly you might get these House and Senate bills to be voted on, this CR to be voted on, continuing resolution, which is just Washington speak for what we're talking about here. The president said in a short time he will be signing that. What this means politically, it is a concession for the president. You heard us trying to ask, wasn't this just a waste of 5 weeks? Because we are now back to where we were when we started, Lester.
All right, Hallie, thank you. Let's go to Kelly O'Donnell, who is on Capitol Hill. Kelly, walk us through the mechanics for those people who are waiting for that paycheck. They want to know, when will this thing get done, what the president just laid out?
Well, what we expect is that Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell will go to the Senate floor shortly. He will outline what the mechanics will be. This is a time when Congress can move very quickly with the agreement of all members. Normally, when we see things bogged down, it's because there is disagreement. Here you would have the Senate Majority Leader, his Democratic counterpart, Chuck Schumer, agreeing to move quickly. That would allow even a vote without a roll call, meaning no other members would need to be present. It would be done by unanimous consent. That is an option. We'll hear from McConnell about if that's the plan he would take. Same for the House side, where they could also operate in this super fast-tracked manner. That would then allow for a bill to go to the White House for the president to sign it. All of this buys that 3-week time period where there would be negotiations anew over Department of Homeland Security funding, border security. So we aren't out of the woods, but with this agreement and with the overwhelming desire on Capitol Hill to get paychecks flowing and to stop the real-world negative consequences of a shutdown, don't expect there to be any opposition to this as it was outlined, because the president did stick with the plan that we had been sort of foreshadowed by Hill sources here about what they were looking at in terms of the deal. There would be a series of bills that would move forward that fund departments, that would get the paychecks going, and the big question mark then is new funding for the Department of Homeland Security. Democrats have pledged that they would be behind additional funding for border security, but not a wall. You heard the president lay out that he has another tool in his toolkit beyond Congress, and that would be executing some executive action to derive funds that he could then use for a wall. That's for a later date, but expect Capitol Hill to move unusually fast now that the president has signaled. Lester?
All right, Kelly, and certainly we saw the movement begin yesterday after those competing bills before the Senate went down. Things were beginning to happen, but there may have been some key tipping points today, including a lot of delayed flights. For more on that, let's go to NBC's Tom Costello. Tom, walk us through the things that were at work today that may have moved this forward.
I think we had a number of tipping points. To begin with, one tipping point was that public opinion clearly has been blaming the president for this, and that has been increasing over the last few days and weeks. And then today we had three tipping points in particular. Number one, we had several air traffic controllers call in sick, and that resulted in a trickle of traffic into the Northeast, specifically into New York's LaGuardia Airport. We had a ground delay and actually a ground stop, then a ground delay of 90 minutes or more at LaGuardia, as well as JFK and Philadelphia and up into Boston, all because of not enough controllers on duty calling out sick. And according to the union, many of them were simply stressed out about the fact that they're not getting paid and they're working round the clock and they are exhausted. That's number one tipping point. Number two, the second tipping point. The FBI director today, Chris Wray, put out a very public video for the men and women of the FBI, again, working without pay, telling them that he has never been as angry as he is right now and is very mindful of the sacrifices that they are going through, not having enough money to make the rent payment, the mortgage payment, the utilities, the groceries, you name it, and suggesting that this is outrageous that the nation's FBI agents are doing so without any pay. And then maybe the third tipping point has been building all week, and that is the IRS. The administration called back IRS workers to help process the tax returns for all Americans. But those IRS workers had to come back and work for free, no pay. And 14,000 of them this week called out sick, saying, I don't have the money to put into my gas tank to get to the office to process your returns. So those tipping points may have really built into a crescendo today. Lester?
A lot of things at work there. Tom Costello, thank you. I want to bring in Chuck Todd now in our Washington bureau. Chuck, I couldn't help think watching the president talking about he's got a powerful alternative. He can still pull the trigger on this national emergency, that his presidency could live or die on this wall.
Well, he's decided to make his presidency, on this. And I had talked to somebody very close to the president 2 days ago who said to me, for some reason, he's convinced himself this is his read my lips promise, the wall, and he has got himself. And at this point, now he has done this to himself. He had more room to maneuver 6 months ago. He had more room to maneuver 6 weeks ago. And now maybe he can buy himself more room to maneuver here at some point, because one thing I think he now has found out is that Nancy Pelosi is not going to blink. That's the two of them got into a staring contest, essentially. She didn't blink. He did. And I think he now we'll see if he now realizes this is what divided government looks like. I think he thought he could roll her. I think he thought he could bully her and other Democrats in the Senate. It didn't happen. The question is, if he wants to get anything else done in his presidency, he has to figure out an elegant way out of this, not just worrying about his own political base. But if he wants to get anything done in Congress, he needs to figure out a way to accept some form of compromise that would mean he doesn't get everything he wants without declaring that national emergency. Whether he's ready to accept that, I don't know. But I'll be honest with you, Lester. This was the most chagrined, I guess, I've seen this president ever. First time you have seen him, he'll never concede defeat. But boy, that's as close as you're ever going to see him conceding defeat, as what you saw today.
On a difficult day, of course, Roger Stone, as we noted, indicted today, a longtime ally and associate of the president. The White House says it has nothing to do with the president. That notwithstanding, clearly not the kind of news that the White House wanted to receive.
He just walked away. He walked away and didn't take questions. You and I both know this guy. When he's in a good mood, he takes questions.
Didn't happen today. Chuck Todd, thanks. We're going to stay on top of all these developments. I'll be back with full details tonight on NBC Nightly News. And as always, if events warrant, we'll come back on the air. But for now, I'm Lester Holt, NBC News in Los Angeles. Good day.
Majority Leader.
4 weeks, I've continuously said I wouldn't let the Senate become a theater for show votes and messaging stunts from either side. We'd only vote on plans that stood an actual chance of being signed by the president and thus obviously becoming law. So I was glad to see today the president's announcement that he and our Democratic colleagues have reached an agreement that will immediately reopen the government while providing the room to negotiate a funding bill for the Department of Homeland Security. Further, negotiations on DHS will be prioritized over consideration of any other funding bills. So with cooperation, we can pass legislation opening the government and send the DHS appropriations bill to a conference with the House today. I'm glad the closed portions of the federal government will reopen and get back online. I'm glad that the dedicated men and women of the Coast Guard, law enforcement, the TSA, and all the other federal employees will not have to go longer without pay for their work and will receive their back pay. I know the pain that this episode has caused to many Kentuckians and to people all over our country. They deserve this resolution. So going forward, I hope our Democratic friends will stay true to the commitment they've stated constantly over the past weeks, that once the government was reopened, they'd be perfectly willing to negotiate in good faith on a full-year government funding that would include a significant investment in urgently needed border security measures, including physical barriers. After all, the only way the federal workers are going to have stability and certainty beyond the next 3 weeks, the only way our border is going to have real security, is if Democrats will stop playing partisan games and get serious about negotiating with the president on a long-term compromise. The days ahead will tell us whether our Democratic colleagues are actually serious about securing our nation, whether they actually mean what they say. So the President's called on the Senate to act on these proposals, and now that there's an agreement between the Democrats and the White House, we can make that happen.
Madam President.
Democrat leader.
Madam President, the longest shutdown in American history will finally end today. The President has agreed to our request to open the government and then debate border security, which is great news for 800,000 federal workers and millions of Americans who depend on government services. I want to thank President Trump and Leader McConnell. As just outlined, we have agreed to pass a clean 3-week continuing resolution to reopen the government. Also, we will pass legislation in the Senate related to the Department of Homeland Security so the House and Senate can participate in a conference committee on that legislation. In the conference, Democrats and Republicans will have the opportunity to negotiate the details of the Homeland Security bill, which includes issues of border security, humanitarian aid, drug inspection technology, and many others. We expect the continuing resolution to clear the House and be signed by the President today. As soon as the President signs the legislation to open government, we in Congress will roll up our sleeves. I genuinely hope that this process can produce something that is good for the country and acceptable to both sides. We don't agree on some of the specifics of border security. Democrats are against the wall. But we agree on many things, such as the need for new technology and the need to strengthen security at our ports of entry. And that bodes well for coming to an eventual agreement. I believe there's good faith on both sides to reach an agreement, and we will work diligently to achieve one. And because we've set this up as a conference, Democrat and Republican leadership, House and Senate, will be involved, as will the appropriators from those committees. Most importantly, this agreement means that the government will reopen, and 800,000 federal employees will finally get paid. After over a month of increasing desperation, our dedicated public servants will get the relief and the paychecks they are entitled to, including back pay. From the bottom of my heart, I want to thank the federal workers who worked so selflessly this past month. They should never have to go through this again. We will do everything we can to make sure they won't have to. The past month has proven just how vital government services are to the American people, whether that's air traffic control, food safety inspections, the Coast Guard, national parks, and so many others. With this agreement, TSA, Border Patrol, FBI agents will all be paid again for protecting our country. Our airports will get back on track. We'll resume maintenance of our cherished national parks, and the IRS can issue tax refunds in a timely manner, all critical for the well-being of the American people. As Democrats have said all along, the solution to this impasse was to separate funding the government from our disagreements over border security. This agreement endorses that position. It reopens the government without preconditions and gives Democrats and Republicans an opportunity to discuss border security without holding hundreds of thousands of American workers hostage. Hopefully, it means a lesson has been learned. Shutting down government over a policy difference is self-defeating. It accomplishes nothing but pain and suffering for the country and the American people. That's a lesson we all must bear in mind when this next continuing resolution expires, and that will make its success more likely. We can never hold American workers hostage again. I yield the floor.
Madam President.
Senator from Maine.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, government